Welcome to Huckleros. I'm Mike Brennan, recording in the world famous Next Core Studios in downtown Rochester, New York, in the historic Sibley's building. Jacob is joining me remotely from Cleveland, and we have this Great Lakes Rust Belt I guess connection across. I spent many years in Buffalo. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, and Jacob's in Cleveland, but he is actually Steelers fan. How did that happen?
Well, we'll get into that for sure, Mike. But thanks for having me on. I'll
Sure, man.
say
Thanks for coming on.
longtime friend, first time podcast guest. So I'm
Awesome.
honored to break the ice with you and start getting into it. As you mentioned,
That's sweet.
I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm a Steelers fan, which I'm behind enemy lines here. I
Yeah.
grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I would absolutely be disowned if I swapped alliances to be a Cleveland Browns fan. So I gotta keep those roots there, and I think that's where you and I and John as well really kind of connected and bonded
Yeah.
over the NFL, sports, Bills, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, all that good stuff.
It's the
We've
Rust
already
Belt. It's that Great Lakes heritage. The only difference really is the Steelers have a bunch of titles. Buffalo isn't there yet. I'm reminded, one of my close friends here is a Steelers fan, and one of my good buddies who, we lost a couple years ago. He had family was huge Steelers Penguins fans, and that's deep within the your culture. It gets in your blood, like you said, at an early age, and
It really does. And to that point, my nephew, who's down in Dallas right now, when he was baptized a few years ago, I'm his godfather, and I flew down to Dallas for the baptism. First thing I gave him was a terrible towel and a
oh wow,
TJ Watt jersey. He
talk
was
about
2
behind
years old.
enemy lines.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I had to get that, get our roots ingrained in him, very early
How
on.
was that received?
Perfectly. So
Okay,
his
cool.
dad grew up just north of Pittsburgh as well as a Steelers fan. My wife, my wife grew up in Hermitage, PA. So this is my brother-in-law. So his wife is from Philly, so big Eagles fan,
Okay.
and he needed some sort of like buffer or mediator to really engulf the Steelers fandom into his son, because he couldn't push the lines too long because of his wife. So I
Right
stepped
on.
in, of course. Terrible towel jersey. Now Sundays he's got his Steelers jersey on.
That's awesome. That's great. So I want to talk about, kind of your journey into the enterprise after college. You had a couple stops on the way to getting into e-commerce.
Yeah.
So, what was that like? And, various business development roles and growing business. If you could just kind of maybe
Yeah.
give a brief overview of that, what that was like, and what were you doing?
Absolutely. So, I mean, it really all starts right after school, right after college, when I graduated from John Carroll. Didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I was a finance major. Always loved stocks, bonds. Just learning about that world. So, got into financial advising, and more specifically selling life insurance. And this was very
Oh, wow.
door-to-door life insurance sales.
Okay. This is awesome. You gotta tell the story here.
So I mean, that's where I cut my teeth, was door knocking a lot, cold calling, building out that referral network within Cleveland, Ohio, to really sell life insurance. And it was a tough gig, and I'm sure you could tell that I'm not a financial advisor today. So
Right.
clearly things didn't necessarily work out, but I think it worked out for the best. Now that I'm in the tech world. So, after that, I'm probably about a year and a half, 2 years out of school at this point, selling life
Right.
insurance. And
So what was that like? I want to
Yeah.
hit on that, like door knocking and door to door sell. It's probably the most difficult, if not, like, as far as prospecting, that's just as hard as like cold calling, or but except you're doing it in person, somebody can like slam a door in your face.
Yeah.
What is that like? And having to do it, you know, how many doors would you knock on, and what was that like? Any like crazy stories there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was selling into there's some rougher parts of Cleveland. So there, that was sort of my territory, was knocking on doors in, these more interesting parts of Cleveland that I probably wouldn't experience otherwise. So I got a, deep appreciation for all the different cultures within the city. Um, Fairly grueling. I mean, most times, when you're cold calling on the phone, somebody could just hang up. It's a little bit more difficult when you show up to their house unannounced. But that really taught me a couple things. One is you got to build rapport, trust really, really quickly, right? Breaking down that barrier to where they can invite you into the house. And I knew, hey, if I could get into one house today by door knocking, then one, my likelihood of closing this deal was very high, right?
Yeah.
Then I could start to build on that rapport, right? We're looking at the child, the kids' pictures that are hung up around the house, right? We're building that type of trust and rapport, and then sitting down at somebody's kitchen table and talking about some heavy
Yeah.
subjects, right?
End of
Hey,
life, you
end
know.
of life, like what type of legacy do you want to leave for your kids, right, to set them up for potential success in the future without you, right? So it's a very
Yeah,
heavy
it's a tough
subject.
conversation to have with someone you just met a couple minutes
Abs-
ago and is at your house.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very
and
difficult.
and I knew that when you're sitting down at the table having these deep conversations, the deals tend to close. And it sounds like, oh, this is just another deal, but a lot of times this is, when you first do get one of those like death certificates, or somebody's trying to cash in on a life insurance policy, it's not because they hit the lottery. It's because this is potentially one of the worst days of
Yeah,
their family's life, right?
yeah,
So that closing this deal means a lot more than a commission check. It is very much about protecting this family, and making sure that on one of the toughest days, there's somebody that can truly help out financially, when potentially the
yeah.
breadwinner, or a household member is no longer there to do that.
It's tough
So
enough. It's tough enough losing it, and then if you carry that financial burden, especially if you're going in, some lower income areas where it's like everything's stretched already. I mean, it doesn't. So that's another, uh, angle to that of, or reality, I should say, not
mhm.
angle, but that it is, yeah, it's not just a commission check. It,
We're
it
not
is
selling
that
software anymore.
insurance. Yeah, yeah, that's some real thing. And like, how many doors would you knock on in a day?
It depends, because my strategy was always the referral game,
Hmm.
right? And if I could
Smart.
get into the house, if I could close the deal, then asking for those referrals and just understanding, hey, like, who else in your life um, is potentially underprotected, even if they have a life insurance policy in place. Do they have enough? Do both spouses, are both
Right.
spouses covered? Are the kids covered potentially, right? Like, are all these bases covered? And we want to make sure that your family and friends are protected just like you, and their families are going to be taken care of, God forbid anything happens. So for
Yeah.
me, it was always that if I could get into one door, then I can get some referrals and either invite them over to the house that I'm already at, or hey, I could be
Oh,
there in 15
nice.
minutes,
Nice.
right?
So right on the
And
spot, you'd be like, you're saying, the family pictures on the walls. Like, what about this guy? Is he covered? We were just talking about your brother, right?
that's
It's
exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly right. And I
That's
think that's
smart.
a
I
lot
think
of the
that's
rapport building and the trust that you got
yeah,
to build, right?
yeah.
Because i- it's one thing for you to be invited into the house. It's another thing to have somebody call you calling John tomorrow and saying, hey, you got to talk to
There's a
Jacob.
level of trust there and it comes from authenticity. If you're in there and they have any
Yeah,
question about it, like, you're not they're not going to trust you with that, right?
exactly.
Um, so yeah, wow, that's a really wild journey. And then, um, how did you transition out of the financial services and
Hmm.
uh, life insurance and
Yeah, I think like most, 20, early 20s, young people, do you love your first job? Most likely not. So I had a really good friend from college, and she was working for a technology company here in Cleveland, Ohio. At the time, they raised a bunch of funds, and from private equity, so they were hiring sales folks. So she hit up all of our friends and was like, "Hey, who doesn't like their job, and who wants to, see if this could be a good fit?" So I ended up at it was a scheduling and engagement platform specifically for nursing homes and assisted living communities, right? To help nurses
okay,
and staff members, um, report to whatever location at the right
yeah,
time, and if somebody calls off, what happens then, right? You could send out a mass message to all the on call or available staff to see who wants to pick up that shift. So that was the type of platform that I got into, and that's kind of my journey. I was a BDR, so again, making cold calls, which was very much not foreign to me. I understood
sure.
if I could do it in person, I could do it on the phone.
Yeah, I think it's like you said. I mean, that's the toughest to go from showing up at somebody's house, then calling. It's like, oh, okay, it must have been the muscle that you've had from that. I'm assuming served you well.
I would say so, and I think a lot of it is that grit and that ability to break the ice very quickly, build a level of trust that they'll
Sure.
give you an extra 30 seconds, and then an extra 2 minutes, and then all of a sudden we're on a call for 15, 20 minutes doing a deep dive
Yeah.
discovery on the
Yeah.
back end of their business. So
I think
that was a ton.
you got to do that well. It's that pattern, because you're interrupting someone. I had a cold call this morning. I'll pick them up, whatever, and I'll
Mhm.
listen. And just even a critique, and it was, and I get this a lot now. It's like, oh, hey, this is a cold call. Can you give me 20 seconds to see if this is worth
Mhm.
continuing it? And I was like, shoot, like give me what you got. And you must have, I don't know the story of the rep. I couldn't even tell you what. I think it was like for SEO services or something. And he just blabbed for a minute, like, and I was like, when he stopped, I was, I kind of like timed it. I was like, well, that wasn't 20 seconds. I'm like, you should work on that. And I'm like, I'm like, I'm not doing anything with whatever you're like. What I'm pretty sure it was like SEO or something. I was like, we're not doing
Sure.
anything with SEO, but appreciate the call. And I will do that when I get like salespeople. Just give them those, you know,
At bats.
yeah,
And
yeah,
who
give
knows?
them.
Who knows? Like I've never closed like a large or worked a large enterprise deal without some level of cold, call
You
or
got it.
cold
Yeah,
interaction.
yeah.
So, that's always where my mind is. It's like you got to just keep knocking until something happens.
And it's changed a lot. Going from, I mean, even like door knocking nowadays, and in those in any neighborhood,
Hmm.
immediate. Your phone is, who has business phones anymore? It's even, I guess, in the enterprise, some, and it depends on the role, but yeah. So selling into, who are you calling
Yeah,
at the nursing home? Was
it
it
would be like a nursing home administrator, director of
okay?
nursing, sometimes even a scheduler. It's interesting. You got to kind of play. It's very much multi-threaded in that regard because the administrator, they sort of run the nursing home,
Yeah.
but they probably don't know the exact challenges of the scheduling, right? They hire somebody to do all the scheduling, and it's literally their job to know, hey, when somebody calls off, because it's not if, it's when somebody calls off, they got to fill that gap immediately because this is healthcare. So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
different standards of what did they call it? Um, Basically staffing levels that you need to maintain at all time to stay within the regulations, and so it's kind of for lack of a better term, life or death for this scheduler to make sure that somebody is in place. So
For
they're going
sure.
down their list of, hey, I know, Mike is always willing to pick up shifts on a Saturday because it's a higher rate. If Mike's busy, I'm going to call John, and then I'm going to go down the list, which could be great. But if you're starting to, um, if you're paying, Mike and John 40 hours of overtime every single week, it gets really expensive. So our
Yes.
software was able to um, really identify who is best fit for the position or best fit for plugging that gap based on, hey, they don't have a ton of overtime, they still have one or two shifts to keep them over the or under the overtime limits and things like that, so you could start to manage your labor costs that way.
So then it becomes like the CFO is like, oh, this is much better. This is better for overtime management, managing cost.
Hmm.
So you're actually contributing to the bottom line
Exactly.
where you're able to help mitigate, because the schedule is probably like in just to simplify their life. They're like, well, Mike is always willing to come in. Let's just give him the hours, right?
Let's give them the hours.
And that's all. They don't see past that, but there is the whole chain of that. It
Hmm.
becomes very expensive, and then on the flip side, yeah, you don't have somebody understaffed and or people not able to come in. I mean, you're
Hmm.
talking about people getting their medication and check the level of service that's required. That's
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. That's a really interesting software that and that would just kind of plug into their system.
Yeah, we would be kind of the back end on the scheduling side, and we pull in, data from their like payroll systems,
Okay.
to get that employee information into the system, and then there we could figure out, we would build out the schedules. So, most people are fairly consistent in terms of, hey, I want to work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever the case may be. So you have, I would say it's like 60-70% of your schedule built out at any given time. And then you would just be, placing different caregivers in different, time slots, so to
Yeah,
fill the gaps in between, and then you're playing reactively when somebody does call off. So a lot of the scheduling manual work that they were doing was very much, automated, and
yeah.
then they're playing just the reaction game of making sure that the coverage is still there if anything happens.
That's it's so funny because when you talk to people and you find out like what kind of jobs they've had, or and talk about diverse experience already. It's super interesting in terms of I would have never known about that or even thought
Hmm.
about it, right? So it's cool to kind of see these unique things and software that people that that it really impacts operations and quality of life for
Hmm.
people. But yeah, I would have never known. Essentially, I would have never known about that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
go ahead, keep going.
yeah, no, because then I know you spent some time at Aircall before
Hmm.
you moved on into e-commerce land, e-commerce
Hmm.
ecosystem. What another like VoIP software company, and
Yep.
what was your experience there?
Yeah, it was great. So I'll say this. One thing that I love about sales is that building of relationships. And, especially on like the enterprise side, like you might be spending weeks, months, potentially longer with a prospect, learning all about their business. A lot of times it's even learning about their family life, just to really build that rapport and that trust. So you spend a lot of time with them, and then you spend way more time thinking about that prospect, right?
Right.
How can I make their lives easier? How can we fit um, their business case with our technology, things like that? And one of the things that I've always not necessarily hated, but it's one of those things where I almost miss those prospects after they're gone, right? They
Sure.
close the deal, or it closes for close losses for whatever reason, and now you're maybe handing that relationship off to a a CSM onboarding, and you almost lose engagement with that person. So there's a little bit of awesome this deal closed, but then also that, man, that kind of door, that one-on-one relationship
Right.
that we had kind of closes. So that's where I had some friends and some mentors at OnShift, which is that scheduling engagement platform that we were
Okay.
talking about, who was in the partnerships game. And I was like, oh, this is an interesting way of facilitating sales, more through a channel motion than a direct selling motion. So, that's what kind of led me to Aircall in my first partnerships position. I really wanted to find a way to work with, awesome guys like Developer Squad and build out that trust, build out that relationship over years, instead of, potentially weeks or months.
Wherever the cycle was. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, if I would, potentially leave that company, man, again, that relationship is gone. If we can't directly work together. So that's what brought me over to Aircall, and I was working with, a lot of HubSpot, Zoho implementers,
Okay.
and a lot of them, to some extent, worked with Shopify brands, and I was working more of the B2B type of ICP, ideal customer profile, but I always loved working with these like cool, hip, Shopify type brands. Um,
Yeah.
so, when I was looking for my next role, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be more into the e-commerce world, working with more um, marketing development, or I'm sorry, like web development, marketing type agencies. And so that's kind of what led me over to Dot Digital. So, Dot Digital was or is a marketing automation platform. Um, and we fit really well in like the D2C e-commerce ecosystems. And,
Can you
that's where,
explain marketing automation a little bit? Just what that
oh,
means and what goes into it?
yeah, sure. Marketing automation, if you've ever gone on a website, like I was just at Dick's Sporting Goods last night, buying a new golf glove. But if you've ever signed up for that pop-up window that says, "Hey, here's a 25% or 20% discount code if you plug in your email," our system would capture those email addresses, and then you could use those email addresses as an opted in contact that you could continue to market to over time, right? That's how
Yeah.
a lot of these e-commerce brands build up their email lists over time, so that they can keep driving repeat sales and engagement to their customers. So email, SMS marketing, we did a lot with on-site personalization as well. And over the past couple of years, they've actually made a couple really cool acquisitions into
Yeah.
um, Social Snowball, um, Fresh Relevance, and then most recently Alia, which is a pop-up platform,
Yeah,
kind of
and
like I was just talking about.
we should definitely talk about all those. And that's where we first met is when you were at Dot Digital, and I think that's like a really good high level on it. But you could do you could get so granular with how you set up the segments, and like
Hmm.
you mentioned going to Dick's and buying a golf club. It's like, okay, now you're in the golf segment, right? And so there could be a whole automation set up based on that purchase, or
Hmm.
that you know you like XYZ. Here's a series, a flow of automatic emails over time to nurture that. Or when there's a sale, it's like, give Jacob the 20% off a new golf bag, for
Hmm.
or I mean, and it goes even deeper of that. So I think that was what is really interesting of the things that you participate in as a consumer frequently or regularly, but there's a whole uh, economy and system set up that powers all of those interactions and communications and
Hmm.
the deals and the thought process behind it. And I think, Dot Digital is really, in terms of their solution, I think, they're very, it's like you could do pretty much whatever you want. It
Yeah.
has that level of sophistication to where you can really, hey, you need to create something. It's like, oh, let's, you could do it and get really granular.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that's one of the coolest things about Dot Digital and the platform that they had. It's so flexible with pulling information in. Like, I guess the challenge with a lot of marketing automation solutions out there, it's like collecting data can be really difficult. If they're on your website and you're a typical D2C brand, and that's kind of encapsulating the entire customer journey, is getting them to the website and then converting that cart, that's one thing. But um, when you have multiple potential sources of truth, maybe you have an ERP and a CRM and your website and other tools that you're using in the back end to identify these potential clients, store data, all that good stuff. um, that's when things get really murky. So
Sure.
identifying
Yeah.
exactly who this customer is and how to target them based on you know different subsets of data. That was one of the powerhouses for Dot Digital, where you could pull in all that data from all those individual sources into one place, and then use that to hyper target certain contacts, right? Because
Sure.
what you were saying in the golf example, if I bought a golf glove in store, well, does my website know that
Yeah.
information? And how do you
Yeah.
get that information into one place so that now I can get a marketing email out to Jacob, who just bought the glove in store, and let him know, hey, in 2 weeks there's going to be a sale on golf bags for 20%
Yeah.
off. And the
Yeah.
likelihood of
Exactly.
me converting is probably a lot higher than blasting that promo out to your entire client customer email list.
Exactly. Exactly. Which we're not too far off from that being the case. Just everybody got everything. It's like broadcast TV. Like everybody's watching Seinfeld, everybody's
Hmm.
watching Game of Thrones, and now it's like, well, what's your flavor, what's your variety? It's segmented, targeted,
Yep.
and super like laser sharp in that. And yeah, it's wild, to try to wrangle that is a real beast
Hmm.
because of the segmentation and not knowing what systems connected to what, and if it's truly, there's a lot of gaps to fill.
Yeah. And I think, that's where the complexity breeds complexity, and you do need, partners like Developer Squad and you guys to really orchestrate it. Because, you know, as a technology provider, we look at every single market as I'm the center of this customer's world.
Yeah.
Whether it's Dot Digital as a marketing automation, or Richpanel, which we'll get into in a bit with customer experience. Like that's how I envision the um, my customers or my clients, whole world is just me. But you
Right.
see it from a 10,000-foot view of, hey, how do all these systems work together? How can we
Yeah.
orchestrate it in such a way that the information that we put in gets us the result that we want when it's pushed out? And that's the real challenge and the real benefit of working with partners like yourself.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great point. It's also, at the core of that, when it aligns, it's the the source of truth of that is, you find people who actually care about their clients,
Hmm.
and you demonstrated that with, starting your career in life insurance. Is, if you don't have a semblance of, hey, this is something that that's the end goal, is you're really helping someone solve a problem or get to an outcome that is beneficial.
Hmm.
And when that's the source of your truth, then it helps all of those things flow. And then to build those relationships in a partner aspect is much more, attainable. You can kind of see is like, oh, okay, we're gonna help each other out,
Yep.
and and it's that win-win-win situation where the both companies involved are getting to outcomes that they want to see, but it's because they're giving the customer who's utilizing both to get where they want to go. So that's it's kind of like it's a unique space, and in terms of the channel and the sales motion is really really unique in that, because there's all the different pieces, and how that plays out is orchestrating all that is challenging in of
Mm-hmm.
itself, and then there's the layer of complexity. You really have to have people who are on top of it and that you can trust to be successful in doing that, and
That's a,
get those good outcomes.
Yeah, no, that's exactly correct. And we've had some awesome wins over the past couple years. We were talking offline about one of them at Dot Digital with SV3, and you're sharing some, and I've kind
Oh
of
yeah,
lost
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I've kind of lost that relationship since I moved on from Dot Digital. But it sounds like that relationship continues
There
to live
was,
on
yeah, I don't
through
even
your
know what I'm
partnership.
allowed to. I don't even know what I'm allowed to say, but it was like I think it was that exact situation where um coming together and have that three-prong,
Hmm.
everybody's getting an outcome, desired outcome, and it was that collaboration
Yep.
and being able to work together, knowing that was the intention, is super. It's super, like when that actually works, because it's like in theory, like, okay, we're all gonna win in this deal, and it's like usually, nah, somebody's gonna get the short end of the stick, or
Hmm.
or it's like, because it just sounds too good to be true. But those are when you can find those unique uh edge cases where and teams and the right time and the right
Hmm.
opportunity, it's really worthwhile. And yeah, the you were like a integral part in getting that rolling. So it was a great experience,
Yeah.
there. And uh but and you mentioned it. Let's start talking about your new position with Richpanel, and we've had
Yeah.
a chance to demo it, and it's a departure from marketing automation, but it's another side of the business that is equally important. And also, just to give you just to preface it, it's also uh a new frontier with AI, I would say, in
Hmm.
terms of customer experience and service. So, yeah, and kind of talk about the new partner relationship there.
Yeah. Yeah. So this has been a fun journey for me, and it's been a few months now that I've been sitting in the role. So Rich Panel, we're a customer experience platform. When we're a native AI native help desk, right? So we're really, our goal is to automate 70 to 80% of all customer interactions with your brand, end to end, right? So if we're thinking about how do I make a return, how do I make an exchange, our platform is able to handle those types of interactions end to end, um,
Yeah,
leaving 20 or 30% of the grunt work, or I guess not grunt work, sorry, the more high value touch points for the actual customer service reps, right? The live agents, which is really cool because in the past, historically, like we've seen customer service agents on the phones answering the same question over and over again. Hey, what's
yeah,
your return
gets to
policy?
be
What's your
redundant.
gets to be redundant, and a lot of it is copying and pasting of what they call macros. Maybe it's in a Word document or stored within the help desk of here's how you respond to how do I make a return? Copy, paste, send it off. Well, that's probably if you would survey some customer service reps who are really good at their job, they probably wouldn't list that as like the what wakes them up in the morning, and what
Yeah.
gets them up for the job. And I'm
Yeah.
sure what gets them up from the for the job is handling those more complex use cases, or servicing those VIP customers at a higher level and getting that, brand recognition or recognition from the customer, right? So our goal is to transition the time spent with those customer service reps from, tasks like answering basic support questions to providing a much higher level of service and satisfaction to the end customer. um, so that's what we're doing today, here at Richpanel. And kind of my transition from Dot Digital over to Richpanel, it's been interesting because Dot Digital, publicly traded company, lots of resources, brand recognition, all of that is there,
Yeah.
right? Large agency network, and we're doing a lot of deals where Richpanel is much more of a startup. We're still grinding it out. I think there's 35 or so employees here. At Dot Digital, we don't necessarily have like a marketing department. I'm doing a lot of that. So on the partnerships front, I'm wearing a lot of hats where it's like, hey, you got to BDR some of these outreach efforts. You got to be that solutions consultant. You got to be the partnerships person.
Yeah.
You also got
You got
to
to start doing podcasts.
we got to start doing podcasts. So
Yeah.
it's really been it's been fun, and I think my biggest hesitation of making the jump was going from that established publicly traded company to more of that startup of, hey,
Yeah.
we got to kind of figure it out. And the biggest concern for me was the fact that I know that partners like working with me at Dot Digital, and I wasn't 100% sure if it was we like working with you because you're at Dot Digital, or we like working with you um, because you're proficient at your
We
job.
have a relationship,
We have a
and yeah, yeah,
relationship. So that was one of those like jumping off the cliff moments for me where I'm like, all right, let me dip my toes in here and see, if I can start to re-engage these partners that I've built relationships with over the past few years, and see if they'd be open to a conversation about customer experience, which is definitely not always in their wheelhouse.
right.
You,
Or
you
maybe another person who's in charge of it. So it would be, again, tapping into that door to door sales day roots, asking for referrals. Like, hey, could you intro me to X person who's in charge of, right?
mm-hmm.
So that's there's some of that as well too. But that aligns, and also it's a different when you join a startup, it's a whole different beast, right? It's a different
Mm-hmm.
battle every day. It's different. You're up against different challenges and wins, losses, and everything in between. It's a different flow, I have
Yeah,
to imagine, right?
absolutely. And I mean, just like you, when I reached back out to you when I joined Richpanel, I was like, hey, like, have you heard of Richpanel? And you're like, no. Have you done anything with help desks? Well, not really. So
Yeah,
it's one of those
yeah, a little
conversations
bit.
of education. Hey, how can we both really continue to align, right? Because we're working with the
Yeah,
same types of customers. Um,
exactly. And when you talk
so
about that Shopify focused customer, and we do like with Developer Squad, we do more than that. And I have the Malexi is really kind of focused it on Shopify, but and we can't say who it is, but like the one referral that we were just able to get, like
mhm,
that'll be like a wild one to work on, right? Like
mhm,
that is a really unique use case, and but the but the real thing is like, oh, this is gonna help is gonna help out, right? Getting that source of truth, source of your truth is you see the trend there.
yeah,
And what I found really interesting too about the AI side of itself is, okay, I get it. It's gonna automate the the tickets that take up time and are
mhm,
monotonous, boring. Like, oh, here's another return or where is my order? Why is my
Mm-hmm.
order? And that's the stuff that AI should be doing, right? It should, and effectively. So that's a welcome um that's a welcome opportunity, because I think that's just a better experience on all sides for
Yeah.
the employee. For me as consumer, I don't have to deal with the customer service line or wait on slow response times. It's like, oh, that's nice. It's a nice experience. This is, what, that's exactly what it should be. And then, but you're not necessarily where you have the, the threat and the I mean, really kind of zeitgeist vibe of, AI is going to take everybody's jobs because of that. And it's like, well, it's going to take away the, as you just outlined, it's going to take away the stuff that is boring and nobody
Soul
really
sucking.
should be doing. Like,
Yes.
and it's like, yeah. So it should elevate to where people can focus on the customer and actually provide more value. I
Mm-hmm.
just heard something, because Jeff Bezos, just raised a bunch of money for another AI company, like it's called Prometheus, something
Okay.
along those lines. And it's like he snaps his figures and raises $12 billion for this, and he's the exact opposite on AI. And I mean, it's probably easy being Jeff Bezos, and to have that, or at least say that. But he's like, I think we're gonna have a labor shortage because of AI. Like everybody's like,
Mm-hmm.
all the major frontier labs are saying there's going to be serious job loss. We're taking over, and so I don't know if it's just he's taking that contrary position, but he and I would say look it up if it's interesting, but he's saying the exact opposite, is that it's going to create a labor shortage, actually, because it's going to get easier to do so many other things
Yeah.
that like we don't even really understand yet.
Sure. Um, I completely agree with that sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
Is there's going to be so many unintended consequences of AI and the mass adoption of AI, and I think
Right.
one of them is the exploration of new jobs that will be created because of AI, not what jobs will be taken away, right? So, I
Yeah.
agree. I don't know if there's going to be a labor shortage because of it, but I can see
Yeah.
that um, what is it called? Front end um
For
deployment front
for
end deployment.
deployed engineers.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. He came out with another word for it. He has his own term for it now.
E-
With,
e-
yeah, like
exactly.
agenic forward engineer or something. He just had to put his own spin on it.
That's exactly right. So they pay those individuals absorbent amounts of money now.
Yeah.
2 years ago, could you find that if you search that term on Google or LinkedIn, could you find
Nobody's.
one
Yeah.
single job post about it? No.
No.
But every single large AI company now has that
Yeah.
role in very, very high demand. So the unintended consequence of, AI adoption is, one, somebody's got to build this data centers to house all this LLM and build the processing power to power all these LLMs. So that's one side of it on like the manufacturing and production side. But
Right.
then there's also the adoption of AI and where what types of roles or what types of companies, what types of jobs will be created as a result of it. So that's kind of where I like to focus my time, thought, and energy is on the cool outcomes of AI and not the potential loss or displacement of jobs as a
It's
result
smart
of it.
use of your energy, because like having anxiety about that is, um, it's there's not much. You got to kind of just go with the flow and ride ride the wave, see where it's going, and just take the right one.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that the negativity around it is, that's when you get the self-fulfilling prophecy of, oh, this is bad. But it's like, well, what doors are opening as
Yeah.
maybe some close. So it's good to keep that in perspective. And I think one last thing on the tech of Richpanel, which I think is really cool, is it's encompassing for a merchant where you can do like there's two things I guess I should say that to really discuss. One is the ability to have an AI enabled retention tool to say um, diagnose someone's canceling their subscription, and the AI is able to actually diagnose,
Yeah.
you know, the subscription, or maybe it's like fulfillment time, and or they're getting sent too much, and
Mhm.
it can just in that use case, if somebody's just going to cancel, or the merchant is just going to throw a discount at it, and that's not, but the AI can actually like go a little bit further and say, well, hey, is it the product, the quantity, are you sitting on a lot right now? Do you just have too much? Well,
Yeah.
what if we tried to send it every 60 days and adjust the order instead of just throwing a discount, which really just putting
Mhm.
a band-aid on it, right? And it's not great for
Margins.
for your margin. It's tough for an e-com as it is, where you can actually dissect that and go a little bit further.
Mhm.
And then yeah, I think you're talking about a great retention tool, and you're helping the customer. I was totally gonna cancel this, and now that just makes more sense. I'm gonna keep it, right?
Yeah.
You're retaining. Maybe it's adjusted. Maybe it's the order frequency goes down, but uh, having that's much better than a cancellation in terms
Of
of,
course.
yeah, right. So
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something, really important, right? When we're deploying our AI agents for our customers, I like to think of our front end AI as um, really that sales associate versus a customer service representative, right? I
yeah,
like to think of when I walk into Dick's Sporting Goods, for example, what are the types of questions or interactions I might have with a sales rep, right? It might be exactly I have a golf ball subscription or whatever,
yeah.
and I walk in and I say, hey, I want to I want to cancel my golf ball subscription. I'm just not playing enough, or I'm getting better and I'm not losing as many balls
Oh yeah, there you
anymore.
go. Yeah.
um, how would that sales associate, potentially help me, right? They might say, oh, well, you have, they would probably try to deduce what my challenge was, and then I say, hey, I'm not losing so many balls. I don't need 12 balls every single month to be set. Well,
I don't
great.
need 12 balls for a round. Like that's me.
Exactly.
If I
Not
lose
anymore.
golf, yeah.
Exactly. So, so they might give me some options because they asked that question. Oh, okay. So it doesn't sound like you want a discount on the balls. That's not really your issue. Your issue is you're probably getting better at golf. Maybe we transition that subscription from golf balls to tees or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be, but giving alternatives to just canceling a subscription is the point you're trying to make. And I think our AI is uniquely positioned so that it could be more of that
Right.
um, sales associate versus
Sales
just the
associate. That was the
reactive.
other. That was actually, that's a great transition into the other one that I wanted to talk about, was having that like product recommendations. It's like,
Mm,
oh, okay, because right now you see that it's like it's algorithmic. If I could even talk, but anyways, you have, if you like this, you may like, and you can, there's starting to be a sophistication with that,
mhm.
but you can dig a little bit further and say, oh, look at I can look at the purchase history and see trends and start coming up with, hey, have you ever thought about this? Or this actually, it could hit harder with that,
Yeah,
and come up with strong things that the customer's just like, oh wow, yeah, I want that. Let's go with it,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, I think the product recommendations is a great use case for Richpanel. So during onboarding, when we're setting up the AI, it's helpful to note. We'll set up your AI within 20 minutes, and you'll have a working AI.
It's pretty wild,
It
yeah.
will take about a week, about 7 days.
And this is
Of
like enterprise too,
Mhm.
like enterprise level, where that's kind of unheard of, where you hear, well, Umber's going to take 12 weeks, and we got to do XYZ, and there's got to be the sign off. 20 minutes
Mhm.
is a huge departure from that type of
Yeah,
integration or migration. We have a whole
absolutely.
history, customer service history, and customers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, being able to have a workable AI product that you could deploy on your website almost immediately is a huge game changer for our customers. And one of the things that we're pulling in, either from the website or the e-commerce website integration, is product information. So we know
Yeah,
what products you sell. We know the product descriptions. So if you come to our one of your websites and interact with the chatbot, hey, I'm going to a wedding this weekend. I have a shirt, but I would love a jacket and a belt or shoes to go with it. Like, what products do you recommend? Or I even find it super helpful for clothing brands in general. Hey, what's your sizing like? Does it run big? Does it run small? Does it
yeah.
run true to size? Like, I don't want to have to return this shirt because in
It's a
Nike,
hassle. I hate
in it,
returning stuff.
yeah, and I usually
Nobody
don't.
likes it.
Right? I just eat it, or I
Yeah.
give it to my
Or
friend, a
or it's like
friend
it
or a
sits
brother.
there. And I'm like, oh wait a minute, 30 days. I'm like, and then it's like last minute. I'm like trying to find the find the return ticket or whatever. Yeah, it's a
Hmm.
pain. Total
Yeah,
pain.
yeah. So, I think that's a really good use case. Actually, what you just said was the return window.
Yeah.
Um, when we're talking about what are some of the better uses of a customer service rep's time, I like to think of it as those like edge cases, right? Where can you provide a really high level of customer service that AI probably can't and maybe shouldn't
Sure.
and take these responsibilities on? It's like our return window is 30 days. Well, it's been 34 days.
Yeah.
You and I running businesses or just understanding humanity, you as a human would be like, well, you've never returned things outside of our return window. You've been a loyal customer. Like, we could see your LTV is pretty high. I'm going to accept that. I'm going to accept that return outside of our
Yeah.
return policy because I'm a good person.
Yeah.
My boss,
It's
it's not going to
it's the
affect
right
our
thing to
bottom
do
line.
for it's the right thing to do for everyone. It's not killing anything, other than, leaving the bad taste in the mouth of that customer. That's if they're just getting a hard no and
Yeah.
refusal. Yeah. So
In
so it's
AI would
able to
probably do
discern
that.
that. Yeah, it's
Ex-
just it's more discerning of taking that into an account. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
wild.
it's
Yeah.
like the AI, pass those types of situations off to, a live agent
Yeah.
and they can use their discretion. Maybe it is somebody who hacks the system and you could see, hey, they do this, every other month. They're returning
Yeah.
things outside of our window.
It's like
They're
you
not
got. It's like you got to talk to somebody about this,
You
right?
got to
Like,
talk to
yeah,
somebody
yeah.
about that.
We're
Yeah,
like
exactly. So,
this is outside of my pay grade.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very
it, it,
cool.
and I think one of the cool things about Richpanel, we've designed it in such a way that um, it's hallucination proof, right? We've all worked with ChatGPT or Claude, and when it doesn't
Hmm.
really know the answer 100% certainly, it kind of makes something up. And when it
Yes.
makes something up too. Like, I've seen instances where you say, you know, ChatGPT, what's two plus two, and it says five, or it says four. But if you ask it enough
I
times,
know
you
that's a
can
lot of
get it to
people are
say five.
concerned as a merchant, or if someone is like, talk about a trust factor. The
Hmm.
fact that you could demonstrate that you're eliminating that has to make people feel a lot better, because it's like the same thing. I don't want to give up. Like, I'm hesitant to give up these things to AI because I can't 100% know what it's going to say or do, and it might screw
Hmm.
things up. And you hear the horror stories of those things that did screw up, and that's what makes the headlines. So,
Absolutely.
you want to be able to uh hallucination free is for me, right?
Yeah,
When it comes to
I would,
AI.
and even worse than potentially the AI giving you the wrong shirt size to buy. What if you're a
Yeah.
supplement company and the AI is acting more as an authority, as a potential doctor or something like that, and those lines get very,
Yes.
there's a hard line of this sounds like medical advice, it should not be giving medical advice, you're
It's
going to
like,
be in a lot of trouble. So
yeah,
there's a ton of hesitation and concern around, AI overstepping, hallucinating, things like that. And, when we're onboarding a client, the way that we've designed our AI is essentially through your SOPs. We create the business context, we create the instructions that the AI has to follow.
yeah,
Anytime a question or a query is asked to the AI for our brands, if it isn't able to point to a specific line in the instructions or business context, it's simply going to hand off to a live agent. There's
yeah,
no friction there. And that really gets around the hallucination. It's
yeah.
give them the right answer. And if you don't have the answer, serve it up to somebody who may or may not.
Yeah, and that's what you would expect of a customer, a level one CSM to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, thank you. I know we're kind of going a little over here, but the one, so I, I think it it's really cool stuff that you're working on, and I'm happy to get to see you on this next stage of the journey. And I really appreciate you taking the time here today. The one thing with Huckleros is it's the stories, but there's struggles to get to the wins, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I know whether it's door knocking, cold calling, or working with partners on very acute enterprise deals, or even maybe with this new startup journey. What was a time where you're like, man, I don't know, that was tough, where you were like, and you had to kind of get through it? Does anything kind of jump to mind, or uh
You
how
know,
you dealt with it?
I'll say just anecdotally, any salesperson can relate to this. It feels like every 6 months I know exactly what I'm doing and I'm on top of the world, and then 6 months go by and I re-question my entire existence. Is
Yeah,
sales even is sales even something I should be in? It's so stressful at times, but then another 6 months goes by, and some pipeline grows, things are moving in your favor, and you're
it's
like,
the
yeah,
ebbs
this
and
is the
flows.
easiest thing I've ever
Yeah,
done in my life.
yeah.
You know, I
I
feel
have
like,
that. I have as an entrepreneur, I have that over the course of afternoon sometimes. Like that. Whoa, yeah, up and down, depending on what's going. But in former lives, yeah, that's how it is. You're like uh, going through it, and the ups and downs, and on the low end, and that 6 month low. What gets you back on the path to the confidence? What
mm,
what helps?
yeah, you know what? I think it's the consistency of just knocking on the next door and finding that next little win, even if it's a little
Yeah.
win. Hey, this guy didn't shut the door and spit in my face. Hey,
Yeah.
you know what? He didn't buy, but you know what? He didn't look like he was gonna beat me up when
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
shut the door in my face.
I
It's
I
it's
I
it-
live
it's
to
being
knock
able
on
to
another door.
temper your ex your the way that you process the ups and downs, and just try to be very, very
Even
level
keel,
of.
which knowing you for some time, I would say you're very even keel, and I think that's important. Whether you're entrepreneur or whether you're in this role, but really kind of doing anything in life, you don't want to get too high on things
Hmm.
when things are going well, and you don't want to, even when things get really low, you want to understand that, like, the motion and the movement, even just getting that next small victory. It could be like, man, I gotta like clear out my inbox, and just gonna make me feel like
Yeah.
less less anxiety over the week. Whatever it is, those are the things. Just keep that motion, keep going.
Hmm.
You remind me of the was it oh man, I'm totally gonna flake here, but believe it was Churchill, and this is John would kill me, because I think that's like his favorite. It's like one of his favorite historic figures. Say, like, when you're going through hell, keep
Hmm.
going. I think that's like when they're getting bombed out, World
Oh
War
yeah.
II. and he's in some bunker on his fifth of brandy of the day, talking, doing broadcasts. I think that was the message: when you're going through hell, keep going. You don't stop.
Yeah.
And not to. I think obviously that was a little bit of a different situation, but when you have something that kind of feels like the world's on your shoulders or on your, and makes it difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Like, I've never come out of a like one of those lows and not, been at higher highs, coming out of
Yeah.
it. So it always feels like, just being consistent and showing up every day and knowing that you're doing the right things. Eventually the numbers, play out in your favor. And I think
Yeah.
that's the sales.
Being able, yeah, and being able to shake it off, that you can.
Mhm.
I mean, hey, I think there's not many people that have done the door to door and that experience that'll carry your whole life.
Yeah.
So it's really really cool, and thank you for sharing all this, man.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good to even just dive deep and get a better understanding. I can't wait to hopefully meet up at one of these shows, and it would be even better if the Bills are playing the Steelers, so we can have a bit of rivalry with it and fun there. And how could people get in touch if they're interested in learning more about you or connect on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn, Jacob Millorino. You can connect through Mike. If you're connected with him, he'd be happy to share an introduction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Email address Jacob at richpanel.com. Feel free to reach out on any of those channels, and I'm pretty responsive.
Go check out the AI on Richpanel. Ask him about it, and ask about Jacob in the AI, and it'll be like, we'll get you to a live agent. It might be him. You never know.
Luckily, our AI is pretty good and handles the vast majority of conversations. But I'm sure if you ask for me directly, I might get pinged on the side.
See, that's pretty wild, man. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me on. I feel like I've gotten to know you at a deeper level, even though we've been working together for how many couple years now.
Yeah.
This has been insightful to hear more about you and talk a little bit about my experiences, and hopefully one of these times the roles are reversed and we're doing a deep dive on your background and how we got here today.
We'll have to get there at some point.
That's right.
That's the whole point. But Jacob Millorino, Richpanel, check it out. And just even if you're just curious about it, it's worth a look in many places. And thanks for coming on, and it's a pleasure having you here today.
Absolutely. Take it easy, Mike. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.